Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third and first live episode of Technical Deficit, solving technical challenges with Ray and friends. And today we're starting off hard. We're not going with one friend, but two friends. I'm joined by Mr. Most Very Person, or Microsoft likes to call them MVPs. We have Kelvin. I'm not going to butcher his last name. I tried that last year at CCS. I'm not going to do it again. From Lime Networks and CyberDrain fame. And we have Luke Whitelock from IQ. How you doing, gentlemen?
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Here, man.
Kelvin, let's put this to rest. Can you help me pronounce your last name, sir?
No, I can't.
So okay. MVP doesn't stand for Most Very Person. It's Microsoft something professional, right?
Most valued professional.
Most valuable professional. That's right up there. And he is. We will still call him the Most Very Person. If you don't know Kelvin, he is releasing blogs on CyberDrain. Our resident PowerShell guru, and when I say resident, I mean global. Because he's based out in the Netherlands, and he is one of the few people I know that is online probably more than I am. He encompasses all time zones, which is kind of crazy. And our friend Luke Whitelock is joining us today. How you doing, Luke?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So I wanted to ask you, MSPP.io. What is the MSPP? What does that stand for?
I bought that domain years ago, intending to do some kind of portal of some kind, like managing 365 or something, and never got around to doing anything. So I thought I'd just use it for my blog.
That works. And actually, we have Clay. What's up, Clay? We have Clay saying MVP is Most Very PowerShell, and I think we should go with that going forward. So we have not one but two powerhouses of community contributions. Today, we're focusing specifically on the CyberDrain CTF Capture the Flag. That was it feels like yesterday that just finished. And it was an amazing and harrowing array of challenges that were difficult, that were awesome, and put everyone's mettle to the test. And that was hosted by Kelvin. And then we brought on Luke, who not only participated, he's going to walk us through also how he handled some of these challenges, what were challenging for him. But also Luke's going to be with us in a future episode, because Luke is a community contributor on his own right. If at that MSPP.io, he's doing God's work of taking Kelvin's PowerShell blogs for IT Glue, and he has ported them over to Hoodoo, which we're going to do a partner first tomorrow about, and we'll talk about that toward the end of the episode. So you're going to get a double shot of Luke as well in the coming weeks.
We do have to say that Luke, on his own right, is making amazing blogs. I mean, for example, he did one very cool one about mapping out your clients inside of Hoodoo. So it's not just converting cyber.
Oh no, yeah, it's not. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like he's just copying Kelvin stuff. Please go to his website. There's tons of other goodness, including how terrifying it is how easy it is to post a PowerShell module. That's one of the very first blogs. Yeah. We have, what's up, Michael? Welcome. Thanks for joining us, man. And we have our very own Sean Lardo here. He's at a deficit already because there's too many big words. Sean is my compadre at OIT. So, Kelvin, the CTF. Can you give us a 30-second rundown on what a CTF is?
Yeah, a CTF normally is a web-style challenge that you perform to make sure that you're able to do specific tasks in the security area, normally speaking. So you have CTFs that are always focused on, hey, how do I perform specific security tasks? How do I break into this computer? How do I hack this specific program? That kind of stuff. The CyberDrain CTF is a little bit different, as we're testing your system administration and engineering skills. Pretty much your problem-solving stuff, like how are you able to solve issues with an array of specific things like Azure, M365, that kind of stuff.
And so when we're hiring, especially when I had my MSP stuff and we're hiring techs, and we do this when we're hiring techs now, you always give them technical challenges. You test their technical acumen. And for a lot of MSPs, that's the last testing they'll ever do. That's we do some training, we do lunch and learns and stuff like that. But you use the CTFs regularly in your MSP, right? This is not just a test your metal up front. This is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, so we used to not call it CTF challenges because that was always too confusing with security type stuff, but we called them the sandbox challenges. And every employee in our company simply performed those challenges at will whenever they wanted. They just were like, hey, we want to keep evolving our skills. So we always took the most special examples of tickets or issues that were changes that came in over the month. We were like, okay, you know what? We'll build this into a sandbox challenge so everyone can learn from it.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's one thing to train, it's one thing to, get your vendor certifications and do that. But to sit down and try to solve this stuff, to really test yourself, and get creative to show you the way that you can apply your knowledge, I think is genius. I'm not going to give you a big head. You got a big enough head already. But I think it's very smart. Luke, are you doing that? Are you doing that internally? And I'll be the first to say we have not been, but we will be. So all my team, look out.
I think we're in a similar situation. So we do a technical test at the moment. We just do an open book one, just really testing how people can do some research and a little couple of red herrings and trying to track their knowledge. But yeah, I think moving over to the CTF I do is like I've been thinking about that ever since I did it to replace our hiring with that.
That's awesome. And we do something similar with documentation. We all of our tickets, we have a field in our PSA or Salesforce. For every case that we work, we have to have what doc we followed to do it, and then we have a report for any tickets that were any cases that were missing docs, and that's the basis for what docs need to be created, right? And you're doing similar. You're saying, okay, well, these tickets, this becomes the basis for a challenge. And we do have some questions here. I do see Tyler, it is not Tractor Force, it is Capture the Flag.
Yeah.
And this is a truly international show today, so there might be some translation things, getting from here to Connecticut, but whatever. So without much further ado, we're going to go through. I know you picked Kelvin. You picked, and it is so hard not to call you Kevin, just to bust your balls a little bit. Whatchamacallit, I know you picked the top 5 challenges. Were these based on? And as we get into the first one, the Restore NTDS, was this based on you felt it was the most difficult, or is this you got a lot of feedback on it? How did you pick these?
Now, these were actually the ones where the funniest answers came in on. So I pretty much chose them based on that. No, I chose these because these are easiest to demonstrate in a podcast, webinar format, whatever you may call it. But these are all also the 5 that would have most impact to have knowledge about inside of your own MSP. You need to be able to solve this kind of stuff in case it ever happens in reality. So these are the ones where you'll have to apply your problem-solving abilities the most. The other ones, you could have skirted around somehow. You could have cheated them a little bit.
And a few people did get creative with that, right? We were talking about scraping the HTML.
Exactly. So, that's
not the intention, but you have to give credit where credit's due. It's sometimes those creative people, that's exactly who you want on your team, right?
Exactly.
I'll say it, as management, I look at these CTFs. Yes, you get the benefit of, they get to prove themselves and they get to increase their skills and get creative. But like, to me, when I'm looking at my staff, I'm looking at the ones that were able to get creative in solving these challenges. It's not about getting the right answer, about how did you get the right answer?
Exactly. How did you get there?
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you do that too? Do you make the CTFs like part of your review process for your personnel?
We don't directly make them a part of the review process because there's people that don't test well. And CTFs help in that because they don't have to have any book smarts and they can just start applying practical knowledge. But there's still a bit of, you'll have to apply yourself to the CTF. You have to do that. And I know a lot of technical guys that are fantastic project managers and that do fantastic work. And they're really great at what they do. I mean, I have a bunch of employees that would just be able to pass each of these challenges, but only if it's during their normal day-to-day operations and not in like a CTF-like atmosphere, because there's no pressure at that moment. And
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
were absolutely worth pressure. I just wanted to say hi to Sean, or I mean Robin. Hi, Robin. So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to get out.
So, and that damn raid challenge, Michael's
That's actually
saying.
in the list. Yeah, that's actually in the list. It's I put it in the list especially because of the reason why it. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
and there was some surprising to me, like the legacy app password one. That was really surprising to me, but we'll get to it. But let's start off with the restore NTDS.
yeah.
And I'd like to hear Luke's take on this first. How was this for you? How was
So yeah, this one was pretty straightforward. Kelvin had an awesome Easter egg that you found when you actually did solve it, of the guy who was responsible for breaking it. But yeah, it's basically, I chucked it into Google, the blue screen code that I was getting, found out that it's probably a corrupt NTDS.dit, I think it was.
Yeah.
So went to try and do a repair on that after mounting the disk on another server, I think I did. Oh no, I booted it into safe mode, recovery mode even. And then in the process of trying to repair that, realized, oh, it doesn't actually exist at all. So
and just so we can so everybody's on the same page, I want to show what this was. The challenge for this was, that's very hard to read. There we go. The challenge for this: download a VM, prospect called, their servers offline, the server blue screens, NTDS is corrupted, connect to VM lab and restore NTDS when a backup's not available. And if you don't have backup, bad on you. But we're assuming backup's not available because things don't always work the way they're supposed to.
Well, this one actually has an amazing backstory because on Twitter I posted some of the backstories about these challenges, and this is actually a much older one. And my employees, I'm not sure if they're watching, but they love talking about this one when new employees join during the lunch table. This was actually catching an MSP in the act of deleting stuff that belonged to a client.
Wow.
The MSP didn't get paid, or they had discussions with the client, and they actually destroyed their entire server just out of spite. So we came on site. There were no more backups. The Exchange database was deleted. The NTDS database was deleted. Server was blue screening. It was crazy to see how much damage they've done. And they even had the balls in the root of each drive to put a little file saying, hey, we've done this, pay our bill, blah, blah, blah. It was crazy. And the thing is that it didn't stop at this challenge, because after we fixed it, I was still doing engineering at that time. So I was actually on site at the client. We fixed it. I booted the machine with networking, and we actually noticed that they immediately took remote control using their RMN tool and started to redo their work or try to redestroy everything, just because they noticed it was back up.
But like at some point, you figure the outgoing MSP has to say, okay, somebody's watching. The new MSP noticed this because they fixed it. Like, you have to imagine there's legal ramifications coming at that point.
Yeah, exactly. You can imagine the lawyers are very happy.
Exactly. They actually went into this huge litigation thing, and eventually the MSP went bankrupt. And I recently checked their website, and they're now a construction company with the same name. Hey, if your MSP doesn't work, go into construction.
I love that. And I love Michael's comment, backing up is for amateurs who can't keep their servers online right.
Oh, Michael. That's actually... Michael was another one of the players who was super active and super enthusiastic. I loved seeing them all solve the challenges, really.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces or names in the chat. Hopefully, I don't see that face with the brain exploding and recognize anybody in person. But
exactly.
I'm seeing a lot of familiar names from the MSP geek community. So we love you. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining in. Where Kelvin had a channel specifically for CTF,
yeah.
And that community, that collaboration of people like, oh, I did this and I did that, and even though it was, you're doing this for points, and it's a challenge, it's competition, but everybody collaborating, I thought was pretty awesome. I thought that was pretty.
That was the worst bit.
Of course, it was in the rules that we did said something like you're not supposed to share your answers with people.
It's
But
trying to help
mean,
people without
yeah,
actually revealing the
Right.
answers was the hardest
exactly.
bit of that.
Luke, Michael, some others were all giving fantastic tips in the chat. Like, maybe you should try looking at it this way, and like pushing them towards the side. It was beautiful. Maybe I should share my screen and show you how.
Yeah, please share your screen. And this is exactly why we're doing it. It confused me because the server I had on backup folder would restore perfectly. Thought I had done something wrong. So, Kelvin, walk us through this. Let's put your screen up.
All right, perfect. All right, so now here we see, and what happens when you boot the server is it blue screens, and it tries to launch an automatic repair, and all of that doesn't work. So like I said, the outgoing MSP, they weren't the outgoing MSP at that time, so the incumbent MSP, they were just destroying files. So the best way to solve this is either, and then this situation really depends on what type of server you have. You either boot the server into Active Directory restore mode or repair mode, and it starts up and you're able to log in with the local administrator credentials. But in most cases, these have been long forgotten. People have changed the password. I mean, Luke is nodding right now because he's seen these situations where people didn't remember the local administrator password for that.
Yeah, it's a domain recovery password where you set it when you first create the domain, and if you haven't documented that specifically as this is the domain recovery password, you're never finding that again.
Exactly. So we're in luck because we actually saved the password in our CTF website. So let's just go to that challenge. Where is it? Local server management, this one. And there is the fantastic password that everyone probably typed a little over 1 million times. And that I'll have to type right now. Oh, be careful. There we go. So now you're able to log in, and from there on, using that local password, you're actually able to just control it as a normal server. And in case you'd have a backup, you'd forget all about this, and you just start overwriting the crap. You'd just be like, you know what? Let's just restore to the last known good configuration that we have, restore the backups, and we're done with it. In our case, that wouldn't have been possible because the backups were destroyed as well by the incumbent MSP. So the moment
how many of your challenges had those little Easter eggs of like the answer's right in front of you, the password's right there, but I think
almost all of them I put like tiny
every
little
single one
hints.
I got stuck on, the answer was way more obvious than I thought it was.
Exactly.
Because I don't know if you guys have done that. I've done it 1,000 times where like it's the burden of experience, right? Where like somebody asks you a simple question and you overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I did this with one of our partners, with Bill at Full Scope. We were talking about this whole thing about like an on-call schedule and logic-based routing and decision trees and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, the answer was a $30 a month answering service. But we had gone an hour into like planning all this complex setup with like database lookups and it was like, yeah, we can just use an answering service and problem solved.
Yeah.
It was just like that facepalm moment. Like, yeah, it was right there in front of me.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I try to get in those challenges, including a little bit of humor in most of them. Like, people should get a couple of laughs out of, for example, getting the mail password and just trying to reference some current events. But that was with a lot of challenges. I tried to just keep the fun in it and not to have people overthinking stuff too much.
And Michael's actually saying the same thing here. He's saying, echoing that, the answers after the fact made me realize I took the most complex route possible for some of these.
Yeah, and a lot of people did. You should not feel ashamed about that because so many of the answers I've gotten were like mind-blowingly complex. I was like, how did you get there? It's like taking a very long walk for a short drink of water. So in this case, we found the file Johnny Backup. And that, lucky enough, this is NTDS data. In the case of the original configuration, we actually found a VSS snapshot that still contained this. It wasn't as simple as, hey, there's still a folder around with the NTDS in there. So it's as simple as copying this, going to Windows, NTDS folder, and pasting it back. That's all this challenge is. But a lot of people took the more complex route. I saw people that started automatic repair, reinstall the OS, try to read the NTDS database without putting it back in its place. And all of those solutions, of course, would work eventually with a lot of effort. But sometimes just the simplest path is the easiest, and that's why I took this one to demonstrate.
Well,
Like, hey guys,
that's the beauty of the collaboration, right? It's seeing how others did it and realize, oh yeah, I didn't have to do it. And that's why I love like working with my junior techs and helping with some escalation sometimes where like they see it through a different lens that you realize you didn't have to go down this rabbit hole, and I love that. And I'm not gonna maybe I'm not ashamed to admit I've done that exact thing where you're looking at this wrong server at 2 a.m. wondering why, it's you send a reboot command and it shows uptime of like 12 days and you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And yeah, I've been that, or looking at a snapshot or a checkpoint, looking at the wrong one. Yeah,
exactly. It's always those moments, and as you can see right now, the server's booting. So yay us, but we're not there yet because this challenge was actually getting the administrative password, the original administrative password. So if you log in finally after this, you'll still have to use that NTDS password, which always is active, especially after the disaster recovery restore mode, but could also be disabled. So this is also the case. Like if I took that user and disabled that one too, you would have actually taken completely different steps to restore this. You would have had to first reset the local administrative password, mess around with that. So I've made this challenge as straightforward as possible, but in any real situation, this could have taken twists and turns at any moment. It could have been like, oh, hey, we forgot the NTDS password, or
and that's the thing, right? Like we talked about like how you found these challenges, and it was you already had this backlog of like taking real events in your MSP life that you had ready to create these challenges from. Exactly. So when it's time to do it, you told me you did it in a couple of days, which is ridiculous, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's I'm lucky enough to have a very successful MSP, and we have very adult process and procedure. So we're able to just take these beautiful examples out of the ticketing information and just say like, hey, we need to make sure that everyone is aware of these resolutions of these things. So that I really like giving my employees a chance to solve issues like this in a more relaxed atmosphere than having the client breathing down your neck and everyone being angry at you because something's not working. We've all been there. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Luke has had cursing CTOs, CEOs of companies on his phone saying, why is this down? You need to help me. And he was just like, if you would just give me 5 seconds. Am I right?
Yep.
So do you guys, so I know we do this when something, and that brings up an excellent point. We just had a little issue this morning. When something occurs that is mission critical, P1, all hands on deck, usually, I learned this early on when we did like field visits. If we did like an internet changeover, or we did something that had downtime involved, I would send a 2-man team versus a 1-man team or 2-person team. And the reason for that is one person would act as the firewall between the point of contact, so the other person could actually get work done. When we have issues in the office, we have one person as a point of contact for communications versus the person that's actually doing the work. And usually we have a third person acting as liaison, getting updates from the person doing the work, but not driving them nuts, and then giving it to the communications person so they can relay it to whoever needs the information. That way the person doing the work can actually get work done. Do you guys do anything like that? Anything similar?
Luke, maybe you want to take this first?
So yeah, whenever anything major is happening, we'll make sure that isolate the person who needs to concentrate and actually fix it from getting people shouting and bothering them as much as possible. We tend to just do it saying, when you've got a point to give an update on it, just send a message on Teams, whoever's then handling the communication. Simply the approach we take. We don't do on site, well, especially at the moment, we're only sending a single person on site when it's absolutely necessary. But yeah, I quite like the idea of doing that on site when we're doing site visits. So I might steal that idea.
Yeah, we actually have this entire triage process where when something is critical, P1, however you want to call it, we have a very skilled first line service desk. So they pick up the phone, they answer the question, start the triage process, attach someone more experienced to them, and from there on they just start building. But they are always the point of contact, just to make sure that if there's an emergency, if like an entire server farm somewhere is down, it's going to take a lot of effort. You don't have someone breathing down your neck. because
Yeah,
that
it's about
just gets
setting those
annoying.
expectations.
I know some MSPs truly believe that motivates people, but
Oh, no, it takes 10 times longer to fix something if you got someone breathing down your neck or standing over your
Oh, yeah.
shoulder.
Exactly. So now
How did you I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelvin. I apologize.
So now we retrieve the domain admin user, which is Papa John. You submit it, and it's correct. Congratulations, we've solved the first challenge.
Nice. Luke, is this the way you went about it, or did you have a different creative method?
No, I went straight to trying to repair the missing file, which wasn't there. But then after that, I was like, well, he must have just cut and copied the whole folder somewhere else in the server, unless he's feeling really mean today.
Which is possible, which is absolutely possible.
It's actually something. Luke solved most of the challenges so fast. Luke is actually in the. He wasn't in the top 5 because he eventually got bumped down. But in the first day, Luke had most challenges solved, which was amazing to see. It was so enthusiastic about solving this stuff.
Just that horrible SQL question that caught me out in the end.
I want to be. I want to set expectations, guys. Technical deficit. This is early days. I know partner first is a solid hour. Tech bar is usually 2 hours, if we don't go 6 hours like we did with Corey and Dave. This is going to be free form. We're going to try to keep it not take your entire day, but this may go beyond the hour. So just letting everybody know, we're not going to be cutting back. Luke or Kelvin, before we move on to the next one, was there any really creative but valid way that somebody solved this that you didn't expect?
Yeah, someone actually started using a hex editor to get into the NTDS database.
Wow.
And that was amazing to see. I mean, the only person I'd expect that from is actually in chat right now, Jason Slagle. This one guy just opened the file in a hex editor and started browsing it and tried some of the hex codes first, and then found the string that is attached to the domain admin and put that in there. And the only other person I'd expect that of is Jason or someone of his level. But it was very surprising to see him like fill with some hex code 3 times and then suddenly get the exact right password, because then you know exactly what track he took.
Nice. All right. So anything else before we go on to the next one, Kelvin?
No, I think we can start with the second one.
All right. So our next one is hacked email by user. So our employee, Nestor Wilk, clicking on some nasty stuff, has been hacked. His mailbox used to send out fake invoices several months ago. I noticed there's no point on if he's been paid on those invoices, but that's another day. Nestor recalls he logged in, clicked approved on something. Surprise, surprise. After being hacked, Nestor set up MFA like a good guy. Nestor noticed items he did not send in his mailbox once more. He says he's receiving emails from third parties claiming they have access to his box. How the hacker kept access to the mailbox of Nestor. The flag is the name of the method used.
Yeah.
So give us the backstory behind this first, because you said there's a story behind every one of these.
Yeah. So I also tweeted about this one, and this one was actually a client that said, "Oh, we can manage our own security. We can do everything ourselves." And they came back on that fast because they were like, "Oh, we don't need MFA. We'll just disable it for all users." That kind of stuff. And it was surprising how a couple of months later he called us saying like, "Hey, we're sending out fake invoices again. Can you please help us?" Because he didn't have any attitude about it. He said like, "I was wrong. You were right. Please help us." And that was something beautiful at that moment, because before, all of the security advice we gave was, "Oh, we don't need that. Oh, I'm pretty sure we don't fit that model, or we're not an interesting enough target," which of course every MSP client thinks. We parted ways simply because we said, "Hey, you don't fit our security model, so we can't help you anymore." And I think 2 months, 3 months after that, after they noticed like, "Hey, it's happening again," they just said, "Okay, you know what? Do everything, manage everything for us." At that moment, we started solving this specific thing for him. It actually turned out that they never lost access.
Wow. And that's really a shame that like it takes, we push our standards and, and I get it. I hear the stories all the time from MSPs. They're able to get to their standards to different degrees based on, the client's pushback and that kind of thing. It's a shame how often we have to hear, something happened for the client to actually listen to the MSP. I'm of the same opinion. You don't follow our practices. We're just not a good fit for each other. Why make each other miserable? But you know, I understand you're in a position to be able to do that. Not everybody is. Luke, what's your stance on that? Do you make allowances? Do you total
MFA
online?
security, we don't. We'll be a little bit flexible, but slowly move people to our standards and everything else. But yeah, basic security, we just take a firm line. You have to have it on, full stop.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people account for the burden it creates on the tech team, right? Like on your staff when something does go wrong, because you know, you're just creating allowances for something really bad to go wrong when you do.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's also why we're able to we have a very hard standard. If you don't apply to that, then nothing's going to work out, because MSP relationships are based on trust. And if someone says no to your security standard, it means that they don't trust you enough to manage their environment. It's as simple as that. So you'll have to say, sorry, we're not a good match. This challenge actually was solved the least in the first 2 weeks, or in the first week, sorry, because the CTF was 2 weeks long, which is actually a very scary fact, because this is one of the methods that hackers are using most now that MFA is becoming more prevalent.
I love Michael's comment. The clients never get hacked before they bring us on it, and that
you just don't realize you have been.
That's exactly it. It's not like stuff just happens. It's just that now you have somebody watching, and you know, we can tell.
Exactly. It's
you know,
when the tree falls into the woods. Does anyone hear it?
Yeah, right. Nobody's, you know. All right. So, are you doing a screen share for this, or what was
let me share my screen again.
All right.
That's the easiest solution. Let me just switch my browsers. There we go. And we should have.
And I assume we're doing this on Gmail. We're doing.
Oh, very funny. This is my own environment. This is the CTF environment. Perfect. All right. So here we go. We can select a little user list. We can see the users. If I'm not logged into my own environment again. Oh, no.
So I thought IQ and IT was you, Luke, and I just realized it's I guess it's one of your people.
Yeah, I think it's my business partner.
It's probably.
I like they put Luke as the team as the firewall.
It's actually Kat was also one of the Katrina, I believe, is her full name. Yeah. She was actually also one of the top players. The third place she eventually had, I believe. So that was really cool to see. So there's a lot of knowledge at IQ and IT. So if anyone wants to take them over or something. So we found out that it was the user Nestor that got hacked. So first, of course, things that you do is like, hey, we're going to log you out of all your devices. We're going to make sure that you don't have any app passwords. All the standard stuff, assume we've done that. And they still had access to the mailbox. Luke, what was your approach on getting to this resolution?
So my first thought was someone's going to have messed up conditional access policies, or there'll be an exception or something which is letting them still authenticate without MFA. So I went to Azure AD, checked the signing logs, didn't see anything fishy there. So then pretty much straight after that, I was like, well, it's probably going to be what it ended up being. I won't spill this one for you.
Exactly. So the thing is that the biggest hint is actually inside of the challenge text. If we go to the challenge text, then it's M365 management hack user. We read the challenge text carefully. It says in there that Nestor recalls he logged in. So he was already logged in. He already approved his MFA or whatever, or if he didn't, it doesn't matter. And he clicked approve on something. This is actually a technique that users are using more and more now with phishing. They're no longer simply saying, oh, we'll need your username and password, because hackers are starting to understand people deploy MFA. So instead, what they start doing is they create an application just in their own tenant, a temporary tenant they create their own application with specific permission requests. For example, read mail. So if you go to your Azure AD and you look at your enterprise application list, you'll see here all applications that are currently provisioned in your tenant. You look around in them, you'll see common data services, which is just made by Microsoft, and you'll see all of these pretty fairly familiar things. And then suddenly in the middle right here, you'll see Mail Reader V 1.0. It's quite a specific name. So you click on it and you'll see it has no publisher. It has no more information. Just this. Just Mail Reader V 1.0. So hackers are now using that, creating a small application and sending a consent request to the user instead of, hey, log in with your username and password. So the user actually logs into the Microsoft portal. They actually log into portal.office.com/ and then the application name. And they have a little checkbox saying, do you want to consent to this application reading your email? And they'll probably try to fool you, saying something like, oh, hey, you'll need to click consent to make sure you're able to read this file, or to make you send, to be able to send you this file. And then people just click on approve and give those users all sorts of access. So if you look at the permissions tab, you'll see here.
I have to point out Michael's comment here real quick. It's 1.0, so it's a stable version. So they had some QA.
You have to remember that most of this stuff is actually pre-bought. It's something that Huntress talks a lot about. This is stuff that's bought as a service. It's ready-made for hackers. They just go to a website, say, I want to buy your product, and they get this application. So as you can see here, all sorts of permissions are applied, like send mail as a user, read and write access to the user's email, all that kind of stuff. So what simply happened is he logged in, approved this app, and from there on, they always retain access. Because it doesn't matter if you revoke the current MFA tokens or if you revoke the current login sessions. With this application, they can simply use the application ID and the password they've set to infinitely request new tokens and keep logging in. So yeah, that's actually this challenge. So all you had to do was find this application name and input it on the website. I've seen a lot of people who actually had the resolution in their head, but couldn't solve it because they didn't check which applications existed. So they entered something like OAuth app or application permissions in there. So a lot of people actually knew where they had to go, just not the specific name.
That's exactly what Michael brought up. It said taught him valuable lesson. It took too long to remember the right area. And that, it dawns on me, that's more value to this, getting these CTFs done. You start to remember, okay, well, we all preach MFA over and over, but how about locking down app consent? Like, in some formal approval process, that seems to get missed when people talk about, they start espousing about MFA and everything else. If only we knew anybody that could make, it dawns on me, this should be something in our documentation platform that maybe if we had all the approved applications on a dashboard, maybe a magic dashboard, maybe in a, Hoodoo documentation platform,
it's on my to-do list. I think one of Kelvin's on that we wrote grabs all the
I think you already did that.
That's Intune apps or something.
I think you already did that.
Potentially it's already there. If not, I'm planning on redoing a load of the M365 bits just to replicate the current Hoodoo built-in integration. So I'll add it in then for you.
And I love those magic dashboards because it acknowledges one of the most frustrating parts of 365 and Azure is that there are so many thousands of places to go look for stuff. And the portals are slow or dirt slow.
Yeah, Kelvin's awesome HTML one he did. We've been using it for probably as soon as he released it. It just saved so many hours of time waiting for the partner portal to load to get anywhere.
Oh yeah.
That's one that we internally use a lot too. Of course, it's a little bit more customized to our own environment, but yeah, it's one of the easiest ones to just deploy and say, hey, I have a faster partner portal. Also, of course, for this kind of stuff, active monitoring is so important. If you don't actively monitor which apps are consented and which are not, then eventually you'll bump into situations where people, or like Jason says, how many vendors have access to your entire system. It's stuff you don't want to see.
Yeah. That's, and that's, I'm sure if Alex hasn't said it 1,000 times over, that's something that should be part of your review process. Even if you're locking down app consent, even if you're locking down permissions, that should be part of your regular review, making sure what permissions they have access to. And I mean, I know I'm not the first one in the world to say, we stopped using some vendor and then we forgot to delete the integration. It happens to the best of us.
Exactly. So yeah, this one was fairly short, but like I said, I chose this one specifically because the security implications. It took a long time before a lot of people solved this, and there's a lot of worries that people can't solve this at all. If you are an Office 365 administrator, please pay attention to this kind of stuff. Read in about security, read in about the current risks, because that landscape is changing rapidly. It's changing, I dare say, monthly, and there's new tricks every time, and just try to keep up with those, because otherwise you'll end up professing technologies that are no longer required to protect yourself or your clients.
And that's, and that's the thing. Like, these things bring to light stuff that are infinitely important, and we kind of forget. There's so many things. I feel so bad for MSPs today. 10, 15 years ago when I started doing MSP stuff, it was so much easier. Maybe you had to worry about, proper firewalls, installing zone alarm or protecting against Melissa, but it was so much easier than it is today.
Exactly. And the thing is that it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, of course, for some MSPs. Like, especially when you look. Oh, Michael just gave me a stroke.
I know,
saw that.
And I thought I had to do a double take because I thought that was Dustin saying that.
Michael,
no, the solution is not to go sell SBS.
No.
Ever.
Wow. Okay, so I was thrown off my game by that one, but yeah, it's for a lot of MSPs, it's mumbo jumbo. It's all sorts of magic, especially when you move into security. So please try to get employees that understand that, or get educated on those kind of things yourself, especially when you're managing a lot of clients.
Cool. So, Luke, anything else you want to add to that one before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest important thing is to turn off user consent to apps to mitigate that one.
It's the equivalent.
The first time we saw it was horrific. It was the first time we saw it was really a horrible one, where the app got consent into the user, grabbed all of their contacts, sent the same email off to every user in their contacts with the same app, and so it just spread so quickly.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you wouldn't think twice about not giving users local admin, or domain admin, and then you go and give them permission to install apps, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah,
it's not worse, in my opinion. It's more dangerous. So our next one is retrieving a license key. Let's see, we got here. License key for application macro hard is requested when launching the application. The install path, program files, macro hard. Application runs as application server 02, and the VM lab find the correct license key for the app. The flag is a plain text license key for 2021. I'm curious, Luke, we'll go to you first. What was your thought process when you saw this? What was your plan of attack before you started doing anything?
So I used to do a lot of stuff with non-persistent VDIs. So I've seen figuring out how licensing works for a million different apps, and I've seen every different tactic people use. So this was one of the ones where I went pretty much straight to the answer, missed it, and went off a complete rabbit hole on every other possible thing I could look at before circling back.
Yeah, so that's awesome. This is one of the challenges where there was a little bit of a red herring at one place, and then there was the way you had to approach the key was a little bit different. It's like Luke said, in a lot of VDI situations, you have to figure this out before you can deploy your application properly, especially when you work with CAD applications or stuff that connects to licenses servers externally. It gets confusing. So this was one of the ones where the client actually, this also completely real situation, where the client actually was working with a bankrupt application. So the company that developed the application went bust somewhere along the way. And that was terrible for them, but they needed that application to work. And actually, after we got the application to work, which was one of my most technical guys, he's amazing. He figured this out pretty quickly. It was actually a little bit more complex than in the virtual machine in the exercise. But after they did that, they actually finally went over to an industry standard system. So it's also one of those stories with a happy ending, where they actually moved over to an industry standard, no more self-developed bullshit. They just, did what was required of them all along. So maybe it's good if I screen share again and just
Yeah,
show you
absolutely. And
guys
I see Michael's comment here. I don't want to put it on the screen yet because I don't want to give away anything before you go through the solution. But I had the same feedback as far as Kelvin doing those those twists and turns, those plot twists when we're trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Oh, look at this. And speaking of the Easter eggs, Kelvin kind of gave this one away on Twitter. They gave the story away, and that was my favorite part too. Like, you're talking about like what the genesis of all these challenges was, like getting the real life story behind it. Redacted version, of course, but getting the story behind what happened it made it that much more awesome because it made it that much more relatable, right? Because you can see these things happen. You can see the conversations with the end users, and our CAD program, or our PLC application, that we bought 25 years ago on our XP machine just died, and we have to reinstall it. We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, I have to type that terrible key now because I'm using enhanced service.
We know it's we know it's SolarWinds 123. I mean, you don't have to.
Actually, one of the challenges that we're not doing, hack no user, which was also one of the more difficult challenges for some, had the password SolarWinds 123.
That's devious, man.
I was just like, I was in the fuck all mood. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to curse on the technical deficit?
Yeah, you can curse. We don't give a shit here, man. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just, let me just grab the VM. Where did I put that? There. So everyone say it with me. #RQ. God damn it, I hate myself.
@hash.
So the origins of this password is that I simply walked across the keyboard. Is that an F? Yes, that's an F.
Jason says, "Stop saying my password out loud."
Ah!
So
Oh, no.
It's just you know what I have.
Yeah, I'd feel more sorry for you if I didn't have to type this password in so many times and get it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I can understand that.
Every contestant of the CTF is like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, it's okay. So we're in the machine, and first off, the biggest hint is already in the text. It's the path. Let's just head towards that path and see what happens. So C, program files, macro hard, however you want to say it. I think both is allowed, right? Okay. So here we are, and we're in the application folder, and that's the thing with a lot of these license retrieval things. You'll have to check the registry. You'll have to check pretty much anything related to the application just to find out, like, hey, where is this stuff hidden? And normally speaking, you could just double click on the executable and watch it as it tries to grab the license file somewhere. I think that's one of the recommendations that Luke had, but this is not an actual application. It's just Chrome in a different folder. That's all I did. So here we have the beautiful file application.config, which isn't actually application.config, because if you turn on file name extensions, you'll see that it's actually application.config.txt. I left that as a little hint for people to be able to find the file. So if we open this, you'll immediately see like this string here. And Jason is already saying, oh, that's base64 encoded. I already know that. But if you're not familiar to stuff like encoding or encrypting things, you'll be like, okay, this file is useless. It's not going to help me in any way. But this is actually already the license file.
Jason pointing out, it clearly says text document. I mean, I can't argue that.
Yeah. So you copy this, and immediately, of course, he says it's base64. Hey, what amazing! So all you have to do is look up base64 decoder, and this is actually where Luke started going on the wrong path. This is the exact moment he diverged, because if you click on decode, you get a license key. And for a lot of people, this license key is familiar. It's the Windows XP license key, but with the last piece changed. With the last piece changed, exactly. So Luke thought like, oh, damn it, I have the wrong license key. I need to go to a different path. Am I correct, Luke? This was the moment, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he eventually was like going down this entire rabbit hole thinking, where is that damn key?
So I went through all the registry, all the program data, was trying to find like, has he made like a hidden license server running somewhere? And yeah, ended up going back.
It said it right in the text. All you want is the 2021 license key. So all you had to do was change that. It was just a matter of changing the year in the key, uploading it to the CTF instance, and you'd be done. It would be a successful hack. Yes, Jason, that's the OEM activation key. So yeah, that's it for this challenge. It's like I said, it's pretty straightforward, but you have to know what you're doing again. And if you don't, you can go down these millions of rabbit holes. Or like Luke did, even when you're seeing like, hey, that can't be the right key, I have to look somewhere else. It could just, the red herring might just locate what you are actually looking for. So this was one of the more fun challenges to create, and actually was in the actual application. In the actual application, simply the year on the end that you have to change, save the key again, and you were able to, yeah.
And that's what Michael's saying. He was saying having the wrong year in the key was mean. I mean, if it's an XP key, it should have just said 2003 and call it a day, right? Like, but
Exactly.
I get it. Is anybody else a little bit disappointed you didn't decode the base 64 using PowerShell instead of using the website? Talk about making it more complicated than necessary. But
yeah, I could have. Yeah, I could have also just started calculating it myself. I mean, it's a specific algorithm, but this is one of the examples, exactly like
do you get extra points for doing pen and paper and figuring it out by hand? I mean,
it would take me about an hour, I think. But yeah, like Kat is saying in chat right now, very good take on think simple. You have to not overcomplicate things, and that's always the case with clients too. If the client is saying, "Hey, this and this broke, it worked before," assume that nothing broke and just that they're doing something wrong. I mean, it's truth 99% of the cases.
Yeah, that's basic, and it's good practice to teach. Because I look at this and I'm always looking at the next generation. It's good practice to be self-aware and look at the bigger picture and not, I'm always preaching on the big picture, not overcomplicate things. It's super, super important. We got here very good take on the CTF, think simple. Jason, CTFs are all about rabbit holes. I talked about that during Hack It. I've tried live streaming, but it's 2 hours of me beating my head doing the wrong thing and 30 seconds of the right thing. That was the other. Okay, so not to go, speaking of rabbit holes, or go off on a tangent here, that was the point of technical deficit. Everybody on this call right now, we're either routinely serve or have served as escalation points for our juniors, and we definitely serve as extra brains for the community on a regular basis. We get the credit of, we get a challenge and we get to give the answer and say, here's the answer, and it kind of looks like magic. But the truth of the matter is when we're solving stuff, there is that 2 hours in between where you're trying to figure stuff out and I believe there's a lot of value in that process. That's why we didn't want to just stop it at, hey, here's the CTF, here are the answers, and go. We wanted to walk through the process because that's how you get better. None of us are that brilliant that, we have a new challenge that we've never come across before in a completely new platform and a completely new skill set, and we still have the answer immediately. It's not. It's the figuring shit out as we go.
Yeah, it's also why I really like watching John Hammond's security videos on YouTube.
Yes.
Because he just goes down the rabbit hole, he accepts he went down it, and he doesn't edit it out. He just goes like, okay, you know what, guys? I screwed up here. Let's go back and restart this thing. Let's just and that's something beautiful that it shows just how
the mistakes are as important as a solution,
exactly.
in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
What were you going to say, Luke?
Well, yeah, I was going to talk about how the problem solving process and finally getting the answer. That's where the fun in IT comes from. It's where you've struggled at a problem and just slogged away at it, and when you finally get the solution and understand, it was that all along,
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's actually Michael brings up a good point. It's the same way IT looks to non-technical users. It's easy, it's magic. How many times have we gotten that request of like, "Hey, here's this thing I really overcomplicated and I made super bad because I didn't tell you for the last 2 weeks, but you should be able to fix it. It's easy."
Yeah.
And you're looking at the ball of spaghetti, you're like, "Oh, damn." You know. But yeah. All right. So I think we can move on to the next one. Restoring a RAID array, and I'm going to go ahead and assume this is a RAID 5 on 6 terabyte disks, spinning metal, of course.
Of course.
You know,
So
is it this one
yeah.
or is it the? No, it was this one, right? The restore RAID array. RAID array.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this one was actually a RAID 1, and this one was challenging for a lot of people simply because they didn't assume, or they assumed specific things before they checked out what was actually happening. This challenge was a real life exercise. One of our employees removed the wrong disk. We told him remove the blinking disk. He saw other disks blinking, removed them. It was an accident that happens. Thankfully, it was all RAID 1 array, so it could just continue on moving, and we just replaced the disk. And what happens when you replace a RAID 1 array disk on a hardware controller? Luke knows this.
It will normally put it to failed and ask you to rebuild it.
Exactly. If it's the same serial number, if it's the same disk, it'll say, "Hey, I lost a disk," alert on it. It might say it's foreign and you have to manually import it first, but in most cases, it starts rebuilding. That's exactly the same thing that I did with the Linux virtual machine. So this was a simple NVM array, which is like the most basic Linux array you can find. It's you say like, "Hey, I have one disk, I have two disks, combine those." And let me just start up the virtual machine so I can show you guys how this works. And the Linux virtual machine actually had a super simple password, CTF.
and Luke, before we get into that, how was your? Was this a hard one for you, or what was your take on this one?
Yeah, this one took me the longest to get because I'd failed in typing in the answer about 3 hours before I actually finally solved it. So it was one where I quickly just tried to brute force it by just whacking in the UIDs of every disk that I could find. And then I went down a whole deep rabbit hole of trying to find exactly how Linux software RAIDs work, because I've only ever done Linux in VMs and so, or with hardware RAIDs. So I'd never actually played around with a software RAID. So yeah.
I don't think I've ever done software RAID in Linux ever.
So someone actually recently commented that some of the challenges were solved by the terminal history. So I just wanted to check that out.
I checked. No, that's the first thing I checked.
But you do see that I edited this file. So that's one other challenge could be solved with this method. So yeah, the simple thing is actually that the RAID array isn't broken at all anymore. If you replace the disk and you used a simple array, so not a RAID 5 array or something like that, where the parity data has to be recalculated, it actually just starts rebuilding immediately when you plug the disk back in. So if you, I just have to copy and paste the command real quick because I'm very bad at typing commands correctly. Just a second.
So while he's doing this, those of you that are in the chat, if you're not one of the 5, these weren't your 5 most challenging. If you have another one that was super challenging, bring it up in the chat and we'll discuss it. Jason doesn't get... Listen, Jason, when you've written a book on Linux, you don't get to talk about how easy any of these challenges were, sir. I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
You know, it's the thing is that Jason is brilliant, and we all know that. So, the only difficult part for most people was, like Kat is saying in chat right now, having to type that UID, and that's also what Luke bumped into. You had to copy that.
So, what I ended up doing was, so the other problem with this VM is the networking on it's broken. So I fixed that, and then I just puttied into it and just installed it and puttied straight into it in the end, so I could just copy it straight out.
But that's, and how much easier did that make your life being able to do that? I mean,
when I finally pasted it in, it was like, I'm sure I tried this exact thing 3 hours ago.
So one of the things that you'll have to do first. Where's my VM now? Oh, I'm losing everything on my screens. I'm sorry, guys. So one of the things you'll have to try first is you have to use the MD-stat engine to see, hey, where is RAID active? So you see that here is a RAID 1 array, and it's active, and it's on disk SDC1, and SDB is disk 0. And then from there on, you can just move on. You can say like, hey, we can use, okay, this is annoying. I keep losing my mouse.
And then a super annoying thing is, between reboots, it will rename between MD127 and MD0. So I went down a whole rabbit hole of thinking, oh, wait, there's a missing RAID here. There must be some disks that I'm missing, because there's 4 disks in it as well. So I was like, it just can't be seeing the disks at all. There must be some other disks that I've missed at some point.
Exactly.
And a whole different RAID. And
and the ADM, wow.
Oh, I see you're getting called out here. Didn't you get Kelvin to check you got it right, Luke?
Like hours before in one of my early entries, I think he checked and I had got it pretty much close. It was either that or I copied in
to ask the teacher.
Well, the thing is,
this was after I got it right. I asked him to check my previous entries to see if I had got it right hours before.
Yeah, the thing is that I actually had a lot of people saying like, "Hey, what's the deal there? But didn't you make a mistake or something?" Because you have a lot of these situations where you're entering specific items that you just know are right. You know, it happens to be just that one thing is a typo, or you use quotation marks instead, or I'm sorry, how are they called? Ellipses instead of dashes. God damn.
The one for me was it's another one of the Linux ones with the Apache config file. I was pasting in the line which was incorrect, and you actually wanted the file name at some point. So I tried every possible combination of what it could have been, and like all the error codes.
Right. So all we had to do was, oh wait, I am using the wrong.
It's renamed MD127, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can actually query the device directly. I think.
I need to do. I think it's --examine.
--examine. Examine. And then the device.
Yeah.
SDC1. Yeah, exactly. And then one of these UUIDs would have been the correct answer. The thing is that it really depends on which application you used on how the device UUID is formatted. So there's a couple of other ways to get this ID, and it would be the same ID, but just like I said, it would be dashes instead of these ellipses or double points or however you want to call them. It's challenging, and for the next CTF, I'm definitely going to make sure that the answers are accepted easier if you approach it in a different way. Because, like Luke said, he actually got the answer hours before he finally filled in the correct one. So yeah, that was actually, it was pretty straightforward. Because as you can see, these disks are now clean simply because they've been replugged in and the rebuild has already finished. So they're completely healthy.
So how I found out and realized that I had got it right before was, if you look in syslog, you could actually see in mid-January the SCC device being pulled out and put back in. So I was like, well, it was definitely that device. I need to go and try that again.
Exactly. So that's also a thing. A lot of the challenges were already prepared way early when Ray and I were still discussing, like, hey, I'm going to do the CTF, or are you going to be a sponsor, and are you going to just that? I think that started in January or December or something like that. And I was already creating these challenges, and a lot of the log files recycled eventually, so people wouldn't be able to do that. But on the Linux virtual machine, they still existed because I already prepared that and finished that completely. So people were going like, "Hey, wait a minute! Hey, there's still a log file that says the disk has been removed." So yeah, there were a lot of these gotcha challenges, and I know that some people were like, "Oh, that's annoying," but it helps in real life too, because a lot of IT is just, "Hey, gotcha."
Yeah, that's the double-edged sword of this. Like, I want to support Kelvin, and we'll talk about his sponsor page toward the end of this. But like, I want to support everything he does because I support the community. Period. It's given so much. I want to give back. But the nerd in me, I'm forget the CEO, forget the business person. I'm an engineer. The nerd in me wants to play with every single one of these and just, you know what I mean? But we try to be fair. And Jason, do you get credit for how many people download the hack font?
I should be using the hack font. I know.
Something monospace, something, to make it a little easier. Absolutely.
All right, so that was actually the last challenge we'll need a virtual machine for, I think.
And then we have whatchamacallit, find legacy app password. This one was interesting. This one probably had the most conversation in the channel that of any of the challenges I saw.
Yeah, this one actually, because I had like two or three red herrings in this one, and it was more straightforward than you would have assumed. But you need to know the Azure technology, and that's what I was trying to get at with people here. Because of those red herrings, people have to start thinking differently and actually Google, like, hey, how does Azure storage work, and what are the options in Azure storage? One of the things that I found most interesting about creating these is, how am I going to motivate people to actually read documentation instead of just try to guess and go forward? I'm not sure how Luke found this one. Luke, what did you think of this challenge?
I found the red herring first, but then I found the actual answer pretty much straight away. I've done a bit of playing around with Azure storage before, so it wasn't too bad for me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. If you haven't played around with this technology at all, especially because either you're working in an MSP that's not using Azure yet, or not performing modern cloud solutions, performing migrations to that, you won't bump into these cases, and your technology stack will start lacking and lagging behind the rest of the world. So I'm hoping that some of these challenges, also the most annoying one that Luke found, the SQL challenge, motivates people to just like, hey, let's look at modern solutions and let's try to implement those.
I mean, we understand, as a most fairy person, you definitely, you're all in on the Microsoft world. But people look at Azure and they think VMs. It's so much more. We're starting to use Key Vault now for storing our credentials. I love the idea of just having that authentication. Just being able to play around and with the app permissions and everything else. Azure is a skill set. If your team doesn't have it, you need to be focusing on it.
For MSPs, yes, but if you're not like directly using compute power in Azure, or if you're not migrating to the platform as a whole yet, then while I do agree that people have to start focusing on it and just get experience with it, it's not like it's commonplace yet. It's not that everyone is currently using it or
right.
Completely.
And I'm not saying they need to be experts at it. My thing is, at least the way we handle internally, I want everybody to be aware that things exist, so that if something comes up that it may be the appropriate solution, they're aware of its presence, and then they can start to deep dive into it. And Jason, talking about, I mostly use S3 more than Azure storage. I do too. A lot of our DevOps automation stuff is on AWS. And AWS has its own conventions for, secure storage of credentials and other stuff. And we have a lot of automation in there. But there are some things, Azure makes more sense. So it doesn't stop me, even though we're using Lambda functions and we're using a ton of the automation and all the fun stuff at AWS. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to sit there and still learn, at least at a high level, what the Azure functions are. And, I was very happy to learn I could do Azure functions in both PowerShell and Node.js, because I like to use the right tool for the job. Just to be aware that they exist, I think, is an important thing for an MSP to dedicate time to learning, or at least becoming aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. I actually just noticed that I destroyed the file share that was attached to this right after the CTF. Because, hey, that's fast, So I'm quickly recreating the challenge while we're talking. Luke, why don't you talk about one of the challenges you found easiest?
Yeah, Luke, what was the hard one for you, man? Or what was the most fun one for you?
Good question. I think the one I liked the most was just because it annoyed me and how simple it was the finding the license key one, because I just went down. It was just because I'd done a load of work on messing around to do this before. I went way too deep on that one, and just ended up being so annoyed when it was just changing the year at the end of the thing I found in 2 seconds. What's some other ones that were good?
Kelvin,
Doing
I'm sorry, Luke. Go ahead, man. I apologize.
Setting up the client to site VPN using Azure AD I hadn't done before, so that was quite interesting. I didn't realize they'd actually integrated it so well with Azure AD, so you can just do a VPN straight in, straight using Azure AD, and really nice.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful solutions we actually use for users that still are like, hey, we need a secure VPN and we want all our traffic to pass over that and that kind of stuff. We're saying like, hey, don't worry, you can use your simple Azure AD credentials, your M365 credentials, and just use those. And that's also one of the things that the CTF helped with, I hope. It's discovering new technologies. In the next CTF, I'm probably going to be talking about Azure AD Application Proxy, which is a beautiful tool, but people don't know it exists and don't get the time to understand, like, hey, I don't need to open stuff open at my edge anymore because I have Application Proxy. It's a free part of my M365 subscription. So yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of MSPs see this as like, hey, this could actually be a game changer for us, or solve issues that we have for secure VPN access. It's one of the cool solutions. Okay, I recreated the entire thing, so I'm not sure. Oh wow, Ray is so fast.
I have a little bit of experience doing this. The best ones are when I'm doing this while we're doing tech bar, while we're drinking. So.
Okay, so of course, Azure Storage has a lot of options. So the first thing that people do is often they connect using that connection string, saying like, hey, there's probably something in the blob storage, like right here, there's some actual files. What's in those files? In this case, you don't need to look at the files at all, but people still did. They went to the file share because that's the easiest method to access stuff. They found password.txt. Password.txt is actually a little red herring. I'll select my folder right here and I'll open this file. Does it automatically. That said, my boss does not pay me enough. Now, that looks like a good password, right? If you'd enter that, it would just say false. No way, we're not going to make sure that you're able to log in with that. So it's the wrong password. And from there on, people started getting confused. And they mostly got confused because they didn't know that Azure Storage is more than just file sharing. It's also, there's a piece of queuing and tables, so like a SQL database in there. So people connected to that file share directly from the portal, not even seeing there was an entire table available. I actually got a couple of emails saying, hey, the challenge is incorrect. All I had to do was just respond to that, like, no, all challenges are correct. I often just send a link to the documentation just to help people understand, like, hey, read that carefully. Because Azure Tables contains table storage. And in tables, you can store specific data. You can even encrypt data such as passwords. And in this case, there was a username and a password in a table saying who stores passwords in storage tables? Developers. That's who. And you could simply copy and paste this to the page, and then from that moment on, you've succeeded at the challenge. So this was more about, hey, read the manual, discover what types of options are available in Azure Storage, and from there on, you'll eventually find this one. I know that some people took days for this challenge, others had it in seconds. So it's a very diverse crowd that we have during the CTF. If you've never played with Azure, Docs is a marvelous website, really. The Microsoft Docs website is so good at teaching you things these days. It's no longer poor documentation, half finished, half written. It's really step-by-step tutorials that can help you discover anything about developers, anything about Azure or M365 or any of the other things.
And I think this is the exact response you're looking for. You know, Michael talking about, after you mentioned MSP Geek, he took the technology and rolled it out for a client.
Exactly.
That's a best case right there. That's, you know what I mean? It's not, you're not going to use it for every client, but knowing that it's aware and that's knowing it exists and it's a potential solution, I think that's fantastic.
Exactly. And
So
that's the last challenge. So I think we're there.
we're there. We've solved the top 5 CyberDrain CTF challenges.
I do have to say, it's my personal top 5. I'm fairly sure that Luke's personal top 5 looks very different because there were.
And that's what I wanted to ask, Luke. What if I had to ask you, what was the most challenging one to you? Like, which is the one that had you racking your brain?
So it was the RAID one that really, like, I had to learn Linux software RAID from scratch pretty much at that point, and so I went very deep into it before I actually found the answer. So I learned, a massive amount just playing around with that, trying to figure it out.
Did any of them provide inspiration to kind of go back to your text and grab a drive out of a RAID 1 array and say solve it?
No, everything's in data centers at the moment, so it's not that easy to do.
What about you, Kelvin? What did you when you put together this impressive list of challenges? And I know you said you have a backlog. Given the quality of the challenges here, I'm excited for the next one that you said was gonna. You're planning on doing what, mid-year, right? June, July, something like that. Yeah. And so like the quality, you have this backlog of stuff that you're going to implement, and so looking through these, which is the one that you thought, this is the one that's going to stump everybody? This is the
ones that I thought were mostly the Azure related ones. The SQL one was a question I didn't make myself. Someone at Microsoft said like, hey, this is a cool question to add, and was actually the least solved. It's also the most difficult one because of the damn name changes. I was talking about it with Luke. I was talking about it with a couple of other guys inside the MSP Geek community. If they didn't change the name, you would have Googled it immediately. You would have found the answer right there. But if they changed the name again, so it just got annoying. I think the most fun challenge to make were actually the workstation challenges. The second most solved challenge was resetting the local admin password, setting up Chocolatey, and all that kind of stuff. And it was fun to see people actually solve that, because those were the starter challenges. They're like, hey, I'm just getting into IT, and seeing a lot of people actively solve that was like a good sign that was the basic knowledge that everyone already had and would be able to just continue on.
Luke, were there any of the challenges you did that you took away and said, just like that VPN one, you took away and said, I'm going to start using this for my MSP practice? Were there any technologies you were unaware of?
Not really. Other than the VPN one, I'd come across, like, at least played around with a tiny bit most of the stuff that was on there. I've done like quite a lot of different things. So I've been lucky to get quite a bit of experience. The VPN one I'm definitely going to use for something as soon as it comes up.
You're muted, Ray. Ray, you're still muted.
I'm muted, of course. Always happens. I love the Mac not getting a seat at the table.
That's going to change. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The next CTF is going to have 2 Mac challenges.
Oh no!
So excited that Kelvin's about to announce the April CyberDrain CTF.
I'm sorry, but no, not yet. I can announce the next one. It's going to be in the summer, somewhere June, July. It's going to be another 2 weeks. We already established a very good sponsor that's going to help us market it. It's going to be bigger, especially where before I was only able to allow 300 people-ish, 250, 300 people-ish, because I was the only judge. Some people in MSP Geek have offered to also help me judge, and we'll be able to just expand on that and maybe even have 1,000 people in the CyberDrain CTF summer.
And I see Jason's offering, challenges. Says, the RAID 1 was easy. Let's rebuild an iSCSI volume using storage spaces on a Synology running RAID 5.
I was actually thinking of making it more difficult with another situation we saw. And this will be a challenge in the next CyberDrain CTF, and I can already talk about this one a little bit.
I mean, I say, just have Jason, collaborate on any of the Linux stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's
Make them
actually,
completely unsolvable.
I'm actually going to be creating a storage spaces challenge where dedupe has failed, and
Oh,
Nice.
that is one that racked my brain for days, and I think this is going to be one of the hardest challenges in the next CTF to resolve without data loss.
yeah.
I think
When I've had issues with dedupe, it's been just restore it,
exactly.
wipe the drive, restore it.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Jason, ping me in any of the 30 places. Yeah, he's in Geek. He's in, and he loves to talk in the ConnectWise channel. He's just all about that ConnectWise life. So, I know Kelvin didn't want me to plug this. I'm going to, because I think it needs to be done. This CTF was done, took a lot of work on his part, and anybody that follows anything Kelvin does knows he doesn't do it. He doesn't do anything half-assed. I mean, he puts his heart and soul into it. It requires a significant amount of time, money, and effort to get these things done. This is not a money-making event for Kelvin by any means. He does it out of pure love for contributing and for building the MSP community up. But he has put together a sponsor page, which we have at the bottom. If you have any bit, I'm the kind of person that when I see an open source project I can support or some kind of Patreon, we do that. This is one of the few events where you have somebody that's actually, you probably have an opportunity to know the person personally. And I'd venture to say every MSP I've talked to has benefited from your blogs in some way, shape, or form, even without the CTF. So if you can contribute anything, the link's down below. I strongly encourage you to. He's a good guy. He's not going to ask you for anything. I'll ask on his behalf, please. So, and I'm happy to see some familiar faces there. I see Lewis there. I see our friends at Mighty Manatee, and of course, OIT is without question sponsoring Kelvin. Kelvin, the CyberDrain blog, obviously, you're putting out copious amounts of blogs every 30 seconds, and it just had a new redesign. So now you have Kelvin's face. I like to joke, he's staring at you judgingly as you implement his PowerShell code. But anything you want to share with our audience before we let you go, man?
No, I mean, just check out the blog. Follow my Twitter if you want to get updated when the next CyberDrain CTF starts. And guys, just have a lot of fun with this. Like I said, it's all to learn. It's all to educate our entire community. Just we all get better.
Absolutely. And Luke, thank you so much, man. It's fun having. It's fun having, not just hearing about it from the creator, but hearing about it from, somebody that participated and solved these challenges. We're going to plug, obviously, your blog because, besides being an MSP and, you are also a prolific contributor to the community with your blogs. And you have tons of PowerShell stuff in your own right. It's not just, we were joking, you copied all the Kelvin stuff for IT Glue and modified it over to Hoodoo, but you have a ton of just completely original content too, including some scary warnings about PowerShell modules, but I'll let you go join that at your own risk. But Luke, anything you want to share with the audience before we let you go, man?
No, just check out my blog, try out Hoodoo if you've not come across it yet. It's a great documentation tool.
Absolutely. And guys, both of these gentlemen, besides being everywhere else, both these gentlemen are in the MSP Geek community. I want to give a lot of love to the MSP Geek community. I'm there always. Kelvin, Luke are there always. Hit us up. Let us know, if there's something maybe you want to see on the next CTF. Maybe you come up with an original idea Kelvin hasn't thought of yet. Exactly. Jason, I'm not talking to you, though. So... So with that said, a few things I want to bring up to everybody. We have a bunch of upcoming events. Most notably, we're doing MVP Growth Fest with ID Agent next month, April 20th. So while you're not going to have a CTF next month, you are going to have MVP Growth Fest. Please go ahead and register for that. The first 250 people to register with our specific link, you'll have an opportunity to ask Wayne Gretzky, the great one, a question live during the event. It is absolutely free. This is another community event where ID Agent is completely, every dollar they get from sponsorships is going 100% back into the event. They have like $15,000 in ridiculous prizes. And OIT may be throwing in some extra fun stuff in there. So definitely go ahead and join. And then for the other upcoming events, tomorrow we have, speaking of Hoodoo, we have Partner First, Making Magic with documentation featuring Hoodoo. It's not Jacob, right, Simon? It's John from Hoodoo that's going to be on it with us. Yeah, I see him nodding his head. There you go. It's going to be John from Hoodoo with us tomorrow. We have Tech Bar as always, April 8th, with Matt Solomon of ID Agent. Always a good time. Kelvin, I appreciate you joining us last week. I saw you jumped in for a little bit, even though it's past midnight when we start up, right?
1-ish, 2-ish, something like that.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Whatever. You put down the PS5 and join for a little bit. I appreciate it. April 12th, we have Ultimate Customer Retention Blueprint for MSPs with ID Agent and OIT. I think I'm not sure if it's Sean or myself doing it. I don't know. One of us will be doing it with ID Agent. And then April 20th, we have the MVP Growth Fest. And in there, we will have more episodes of Technical Deficit, either pre-recorded or live. So you can expect to see Luke once again sharing his magic dashboards and his magic PowerShell, getting stuff in to lower that barrier to entry, to use a phenomenal and we're not sponsored by Hoodoo by any means. I love the product. So we'll get to see a lot more of Luke in the next episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so thank you for spending 2 hours with us, and you have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you.
You too. All right.